Getting the early numbers could be the key to success when betting on the NFL. That's why we're here to react to the Pinnacle openers and analyse where the market might move. Welcome to the opening line. It is time for another episode of the opening line. We're getting ready for week 12 of the NFL season, and here to take you through the odds are not our three, but our two NFL experts this week. We've got Eric Eager and Andy Molitor. Andy, I'll start with you. How was week 11? Are you heading into week 12 on the up, or are you looking to recover some losses?
Yeah, had a winning week. It was nice. Didn't really get involved last night. Just a little second half bet that didn't quite get there. But Chiefs second half was a nice closer for Sunday. And overall, I made this joke with some people, and I don't even know if it probably wasn't even a joke. Like, I almost wish I didn't bet sometimes, because that Chiefs Raiders game was something to just take in. Like, I'm almost mad I had money on that game. Like, I wish I could have just watched it unimpeded, because it was really a fun game, and hopefully we actually get a third matchup of those two teams in the playoffs.
Yeah, definitely a decent one for the neutral. Eric, were you involved from a betting perspective on that one, or how did the other games go?
I think I had some Chiefs at 6.5, which never really materialized or had a chance. I had a little over as well, which luckily got there. But yeah, it was a good week. I mean, we saw value on Dallas, we saw value on the Jets, we saw value on eventually Denver once I got to +4. We saw value on Tampa Bay last night as well as the over. So it was a good week. But I think this week will be interesting in that there's not as many fun marquee games, and especially on Thursday, you're going to be basically slogging through, I think.
Yeah, I mean, we were chatting a little bit off air, and there's kind of, I don't know about elsewhere, but at Pinnacle, I'm seeing a lot of grayed out, a lot of keypad signs, games getting taken down, some being put up. So we'll work our way through it. We'll work with what's there on the board, and obviously talk about some of the other games that might not be available to bet now, but it will still be interesting to get some input from you guys. So we'll start off with the Houston Texans at the Detroit Lions. This one's opened up at -2.5 on the Texans and a 51-point total. The 2.5 is still there, but it is edging towards the 3. Potentially might get there later in the week. Could even come back the other way. But is it one where you're waiting for it to hit the 3 and maybe take Detroit, or do you think Houston are worth the points? Where do you sit on that one, Andy?
I took a little position on this under, just based on what I'm seeing from. I mean, I don't think Stafford's thumb ligament is going to heal overnight, even if you give him the full 4 days here. So this offense, they might get Galladay back, and maybe Eric says some insight on that. I think it's trending towards a 50-50, and if Galladay plays, it'll be a lot better for that Detroit offense. I don't understand exactly why, but it seems to drive through him, and it took an absolute detour to. I mean, they got shut out. And they lost 20-0 in a game where they picked off the opposing quarterback twice in the end zone. Like, you played against an XFL quarterback, kind of made him look bad at times. Yes, they still had nice receivers, but that was a very bad performance. I don't think we're going to see something like that, but the total was a little high for my liking, especially with some injuries at receiver for Houston. And even though it is indoors and Detroit's secondary is bad, I would love to see Houston with a lead, because I don't think Detroit has the roster right now to get back into a game, man. If they fall behind, it could just be a really snoozy game. Hopefully you eat your turkey early. You can sleep through the second half of this one. I don't think I can take... If I did have to take a side, it would probably just be Detroit straight up. Or, excuse me, Houston. Houston and the points. Like, if you're going to bet Detroit, you're betting Galladay plays and kills. Like, you might as well just play him straight up. But, yeah, Houston laying the points, but it's probably a bit much for me even.
I laid 2.5 earlier in this week when it was, sort of more 110, 115. I like nothing more than betting against Matt Patricia, against one of the legitimately a top 5 quarterback in the NFL on a short week indoors. That the defense is bad. Don't let the only 20 points against PJ Walker sort of fool you. They're, I think, a mess from a coaching standpoint on both sides of the football. I do think Galladay helps them, but Stafford's thumb, like, is that getting better in a 3-day rest period? I don't think so. So I think Houston's literally the only side. I don't mind Andy's approach to the total. I have to look at what we have for the total here. The only issue is both defenses are extremely bad and leaky. And so you're basically making a bet against, we have it at 52 and a half. So I can see why you like the under, but I don't think the defenses, either one of them, are fundamentally good. If you're betting the under, Andy, right, you're making a bet that Detroit's offense is going to completely stall, in which case I just lay the points with Houston, right?
Yeah.
You mentioned their top 5 quarterback in Deshaun, Eric. Just how good is he according to your numbers? And obviously we know that most sides are going to rely on their quarterback. Is it just simply a case of he doesn't have a good game that the Texans are just going to massively struggle?
Yeah, but he hasn't had any stinkers really of late. I mean, they're averaging almost a quarter of an expected point per pass. They're terrible in the run game, but they sort of have abandoned that. They pass the ball 69% of the time. And Watson, when clean, has 120 pass rating. He's only thrown a turnover-worthy play one out of every, it seems like 60 pass. One out of every 60 dropbacks is a turnover-worthy play, which that's like once every 2 games. So you can really win with that. It's just that their defense is so horrendous. In a couple of games, they didn't get stops at the end. And in the game against New England, they did. And that they ended up victorious in that one. So I guess there aren't quarterbacks in the league right now who are making big plays at the clip that Watson is and preventing turnovers at the rate he is as well.
Yeah, hopefully like you talked about, they did just abandon the run. With Tunsil out, they just couldn't get anything going. And I guess good on them for just saying, well, this ain't working, let's not do it anymore. And hopefully from a game script point, we see something like that where they get a lead and if they're unable to put together drives to just kill clock and they kick it back to Detroit, I think that's just as good for the under as them running the ball for 8 minutes. Like anytime Detroit has the ball, I'm happy. So I like your side as well.
All right, then. Well, let's. As we said, we got plenty of games to get through today. We'll move on to Washington football team at the Dallas Cowboys. This one has stayed where it opened on the side, -3 on the Cowboys here. The totals dropped a bit, 47 down to 46. Another win for Washington on Sunday. A massive divisional matchup here. Obviously, I'm not sure. We talked about it a couple of weeks back. I'm not sure if anyone's actually taken them to win the NFC East, but it's looking a lot more likely now than it did back then, and certainly going to look even better if they get it done here. Eric, I'll go to you. Do you think they can do it, or do Dallas deserve to be favorites?
People are jumping all over Dallas, right, because of the win against, what I think we'll all agree is an okay Minnesota team on the road. Andy Dalton was great. And the run game, they used Pollard enough to overcome having Zeke on the field too much. Their defense, I thought, it brought a toughness there that they hadn't had in recent weeks. I think the Vikings kind of played into it by running the football too much. So I can see why they're favored. I can see why, but I can also see why it looks like it's trending towards Washington. Our number is more like 2.4 on this game. And for me, Alex Smith keeps both teams in every single game. And he's never going to kill Washington, which was the issue with Haskins in many cases. And the defensive line for the football team is a lot stronger than anything Minnesota has to offer. And the last time they interacted, it was they basically got Dalton killed out there. So I can see why Dallas is favored, but I also think Washington is going to be a little bit live in here. So I'm probably laying off both side and total here, but if you made me, I think I'd take Washington.
Andy, was there a little hand raise there when we talked about the NFC East?
No, I'm thinking about betting Dallas to win it. Like they could win 8 games if they just keep Dalton clean. They have really good receivers. Like it's a thing that could happen. Like they're a pretty bad team on defense. Although just you did see some toughness. I hate to throw things we can't quantify toughness or grittiness or how hard, but they were hitting hard and they were playing hard for a team that may say people said quit. I don't know. You can find better than 2.5 or 2-1 on them to win the division. Like I've run some numbers on just what I think will happen, and even though I do make Washington favored in this game, like just based on pure numbers, I haven't upgraded Dallas yet off anything they did Sunday. I have a lot to think about on that game. I actually want to watch parts of that back because I don't know, but Andy Dalton might just be the guy we thought he could be a few weeks ago. It's like, this is one of the better backups in the league. He has 3 receivers who could be, high-end receivers. And if they're going to use Tony Pollard more, this might be a good offense where this could just be like the crappy Chiefs where, oh man, this offense has some good receivers and they can't stop anybody.
Yeah.
Like you're just really, really, really low rent Chiefs where it's like, well, you got to outscore Dallas because their offense kind of works if you can't get pressure on them. That said, like, I don't know, who's Minnesota's sack leader right now, Eric? I'm not sure I can answer that question.
Afani Adegbo maybe, or Shamar it's bad.
It might be Shamar.
Yeah.
That's not good. They don't have anybody that's going to get the kind of pressure. I hate to bring up, it was Ngakoue, who's not on the team anymore. The leaders, Eric Wilson with 3. So they don't have the kind of pressure you can get from that front 4 in Washington. So that'll be the matchup I'm looking for. I'm not betting this game. And then also, like, the news right now is there has been an update on what we talked about off air. It looks like the strength and conditioning coach had a major medical issue today and is in the emergency room. So they had
it sounds like he passed away.
Yeah, that was I'd heard that. I'm not seeing anything substantiating that. SI like 5 minutes ago said serious condition at the hospital. So, and if those rumors are true, I'm not sure they'll even play this game. It'll be interesting to see. Hopefully everything's all right down there in Dallas. But my numbers say Washington. I'll probably not bet this game if it even occurs.
And by our numbers, Dallas is the only team in the NFC East that has an above-average schedule in terms of ease. The average Dallas opponent is 2 points worse than the average opponent, whereas New York has the 19th hardest schedule, Washington 19th easiest, 22nd easiest, and then Philly, who I think has one of the rougher ones, 27th there. The next 4 games, I think Philly's going to be underdogs by a decent amount in the next 4.
And just remind me, Eric, was your kind of perspective on that? Did you get involved in it from a betting point of view, or was it more one just to sit on the sidelines and it was just an interesting kind of topic to cover for you?
No, I mean, I'm on some Philly to not make the playoffs. I'm on some Washington and Dallas are the 2. So, which I'm a little worried about because, frankly, Daniel Jones is probably the best quarterback in that division, and I'm betting against him. And they have an easy one this week against Cincinnati. So, in theory, if you like the Giants to win the NFC East, they're probably going to get more expensive after this week, after a road win in Cincy. So that's kind of where I'm at. I think almost all of my NFC East take is profoundly just anti-Philly, but there is some pro Washington and some pro Dallas mixed in there.
All right. Were you going to say something?
I'm on anybody but Philly, I think, is where I'm looking at. From the schedule, I don't understand why Philly's number is what it is. Like, I almost want to look for a no on Philly right now. I know you guys on your podcast, Eric, have some like no to make the playoffs from earlier in the year on Philly.
Yeah.
I think
under 9.5 is just such a cinch, especially after the Brandon Brooks injury. But, people like Philly. Interesting thing about Philly is I think they're decent at basic strategy. They go for all the right 4th downs, but their scheme is terrible. And I think Wentz at this point is just irreducibly bad. Like when you don't give your team a chance on 20% of your dropbacks, like it's just not, you can't win that way. Right. And that's been the case every single game this year.
All right. Well, our next game and the last one for the Thanksgiving lineup is the Baltimore Ravens at the Pittsburgh Steelers. This one, I don't really know where to begin. There's a whole lot of COVID going on, I think, with the Ravens, and I'm not too sure what the state is at the moment. We're currently on -4 on the Steelers, 45-point total. Is it one where you can get involved on sort of ifs and maybes, or is this one just sit back, eat your dinner, drink your drink, and enjoy the game?
I bet Pittsburgh already. Like I got the good number.
You got it at 3, right, Andy?
I get it at a flat 3. So good, good for me for predicting the rise of Corona in the charmed city there.
Well, I mean, think about this.
I like the number either way.
Well, but this is also a key point to make. Which teams are more fragile to losing players? I think it is. Baltimore's defense is very numbers based, right? Like they beat you not because they have superstars, but because they have a lot of really good players, right? Yeah. And you pluck a really good player or two off of that defense, and it's more than 1 or 2 players worth, the way that things work. Additionally, on offense, they're defensive like in their offense, in that their offense requires a number of interconnected pieces to work well. They're not a quarterback centric team. And we've seen why their offense has struggled this year. They're an offense that requires the most valuable offensive line in football a season ago. They're an offense that requires their running backs to all be in tip-top shape, and their tight ends. And, we don't know which players, we know COVID's going to happen, right? Like this is a lock now, right? And COVID is going to affect, look at Kansas City the other day. COVID took out their third wide receiver in McCole Hardman for most of the game. It took out some practice time for other players. And they make one big bet on Patrick Mahomes and end up winning, right? Like that's just what it is, right? Pittsburgh is a little bit more. They're obviously good on defense, but like they're also a team full of stars. If you don't hit Watt, Fitzpatrick, Big Ben, and 3 of his 4 receivers, they're still going to be a pretty damn good team, right? So the COVID stuff, like that's kind of how you have to think about this. And I don't know if that was intentional on your end, but it's probably smart.
Definitely intentional.
The fact that they already had some going through with like the fact that there was running backs with COVID, like the odds of them having another breakout the next week isn't worse. It's certainly better. So I don't know that they'll play this game. They're up to like 10 now. I hope they make them play this game. 11-0 Steelers. Let's go Pittsburgh.
I push back. I think they will play the Dallas game just because the history of the league, like Jovan Belcher shot himself the day before the Chiefs-Panthers game in 2011 or 2012, and they played the game through. Like these things, the NFL is like
Dallas on Thanksgiving. I think they'll play. It's Dallas on Thanksgiving. The other one doesn't have. You're right. It doesn't have the tradition of Dallas and Detroit. It'll be interesting, but they don't have any more bye weeks to fill these games in.
Right. It's the 1 week a year, or sorry, the 2 weeks a year where NBC has 2 games. And so that's tricky as far as broadcasting rights and stuff too. If they were to move Baltimore, Pittsburgh to, let's say, Sunday or Monday, that the logistics there are not great, right, for the league, for NBC and the league. So there's a ton of incentive for them to play. Like whether it's moral or not is another story.
Just to your point, Eric, about COVID and how people really approach betting, and Andy, it could be a case here with the Ravens. Is it something, generally speaking? I guess you could take 2 approaches. You could be a little bit more tentative and kind of worry about getting involved, or you could take the approach where you attack the market and look for those gains to be had and really kind of get more aggressive with your betting. How have you two kind of dealt with that? Are you on either side of that?
I did joke around a little, but I mean, what I meant when I said the fact that they had running backs out last week, like you're seeing this where you're having this issue from week to week with some of these teams. And I would have thought, this is more of a Vegas thing or a team who can't seem to get a grip on this. This is a well-coached, well-managed team. So it's a little surprising that it is Baltimore, but still it's a virus. It's hard to control, I guess, if you don't know and you have somebody spreading it who's asymptomatic, and it can spiral out like this. And I guess truly, and if none of this had happened, I still would have bet this 3. Like the fact that they're just not the same team as what they played when these 2 teams met, a month ago. The injuries on the offensive line are making a big difference. I think Lamar's still not at 100%. And I think Williams was trending in. Campbell was out anyway, but the defensive line injuries have been bad too. It's a multiple cluster injury team.
I think for me too, another place to look, and again, this is anecdotally, we have a model, and when defensive players are out, that we take them out, and there are effects there. For me, I would say, in addition to just like modeling, if you want a secondary handicap, I think a lot of it is, okay, defense doesn't matter as much this year because it requires you to hit flush, and that's never going to happen anymore. Or bad defenses can have good games because offensive line play is largely fragile, right? And if a team all of a sudden loses a bunch of offensive linemen, a bad defense can take advantage of that. So there are a number of things. Like, I think your models become more quarterback based in a year like this. A secondary thing, though, is, I think one of the things that folks in the league are worried about is teams that are out of it not adhering to that's really like the one thing that people are praying for right now, are teams like the Jets and teams like the Bengals and Chargers and those teams taking the next month seriously, right? Because there's really not a huge incentive for them to do so. In fact, if they forfeit games, then they get closer to Trevor Lawrence, right? So there's a difficulty here. Now with respect to the Ravens, it might be the case that a team that's not meeting their own expectations lapses a little bit on protocols and stuff like that. That has to, whereas a team like Pittsburgh, who is seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, there might be better at adhering to the protocols, might be more focused. Those are anecdotes that I have to test, but those are things that pop into my mind.
Yeah, and it's just kind of interesting to think about it. Here we are, sort of week 12 of the season, talking about it. I'm sure there are very sharp guys out there that before the season started, this was part of their process and what they were thinking about in terms of looking at the markets. But it may well still be around for a while yet, anyway. But we'll get on to our next game. We've got the Las Vegas Raiders at the Atlanta Falcons. The Raiders have got to the 3 after being put up at -2.5. The total's pretty big, I guess, 56. If anything, it looks like it's going to come down. That's sort of judging by the early part of the week. The Raiders, I mean, they did you over against the Chiefs, Eric, as you said. They put up a decent enough fight. The late score, I think the consensus seems to be that it always looked likely. The Falcons, meanwhile, they were pretty poor against the Saints. They've been pretty poor all season. You can see why the Raiders make sense maybe at -3, but it could be a case again of people overreacting as we see sort of week to week. Is it one where the total maybe makes more sense, or do you think that the Raiders could offer value here, Eric?
I can't lay it with the Raiders. I just at the same time, the Falcons offense was probably the worst. I don't think any unit in the NFL performed more poorly than Atlanta's offense did a week ago. Their defense has a lot of the same difficulties that the Chiefs defense has, so I do think the Raiders match up well there. But I'm choosing not to overreact. I don't like either side of this game. I think our number is about 2.4, so it's not really the value there. So I'm off this game. I don't think I can bet it.
I'm pretty much on market with this one too, and yeah, Matt Ryan was broken on Sunday. I have no idea what was going on. I didn't catch a lot of that game. I was just catching highlights, but then you go look at the stats, and I saw some replays. I just don't understand if it was all on Matt Ryan or if it was some of the scheme, the game plan. They were off a bye. Like the fact that they looked like that, again, it's not like it was a super easy opponent, but still, they have some weapons. I just don't understand what was wrong with that offense. If there ever was a get-right game, maybe it's against one of the worst defenses in the league, but laying points here on the road with a really porous defense doesn't feel good, especially kind of coming off a crushing loss. I don't know how much you can put into that as far as the narrative, and then the West Coast team playing early. Big total like this, if you want Atlanta, I guess, just take them straight up. I don't think if I really thought the Raiders were in a letdown spot and I wanted to get Matt Ryan in a bounce back, I'd be taking Atlanta money line. But
yeah,
this total's probably right. This total could get blasted too. Both of these defenses can be beaten.
Yeah, the problem is I think both teams in their natural environment want to run the football, right? And like I was on the one bet I did lose last week was and I took this when it was Jameis, but I liked it even more when it was Taysom Hill, was Atlanta +5. And the most disheartening, this is when I knew the bet was over. Atlanta got a stop, but around midfield, and the Saints punted. Atlanta got the ball basically at their own 10-yard line, and they responded, being down 8, having a chance to tie the football game by running the ball twice to Todd Gurley on early downs and then taking a sack and punting. And Atlanta has all season never not wanted to engage in these big scoring affairs, and instead trying to justify the Todd Gurley signing. That will probably get me off this over here.
Is it me, or do the totals? I mean, you say the defense is here and it could easily get blasted, but are we seeing a point where people do sort of second guess totals now, and they do look a little bit on the high side, or are you still leaning more towards the overs as the season's gone on?
It just takes some bad variance in the red zone in like one quarter, and you're kind of struggling to get to 56 points.
Right. That's the thing. Like, I had over in last night's game. I had over in the Houston game. Now that game played over, I thought. And like you said, Andy, even a total like 49, a couple bad red zone appearances, or one team getting out ahead by 2 scores and sort of, pumping the brakes at the end of the game, like 56. I mean, that's a bomb, right? Like we had one, you guys talked about this on your show, Andy, Josh Allen and the Bills at Arizona. Both teams scored on every possession of the first half, and it was still not on pace to go over because the total is 56.
7 field goals or something.
Yeah, exactly. You kick field goals, and the Falcons aren't a cinch to make their field goals either. And so, all of that is a problem. Even the game, like it just takes good variant. It takes a total that's 56 or more is just not a slam dunk. I don't know, like Rob Pizzola, who I know you guys both know. It's hard to bet an under in the NFL nowadays, but some of these overs don't have a shot after quarter one.
All right, well, we'll get onto the Arizona Cardinals at the Patriots. 3 points on the Cardinals here and 48 on the total. This one bettors that they were keen to take the over early on in this one. I think the Patriots have got to be like the most up and down team this season. Out of it now, not going to make the playoffs. I'm not really sure what we can expect for the rest of the season. Obviously, the Cardinals have still got something to play for. Murray was in the conversation for MVP for all of a week, I think. I mean, he's
like 35 minutes or so.
Yeah.
He's playing well. He's obviously not at that level yet. I guess the question is he good enough to get the Cardinals a cover here, Andy, do you think?
I haven't got a lot of updates on the shoulder issue, and maybe Eric can speak to that, but he looked okay even after dinging up that shoulder a little, but that's something that could swell up throughout the week if it's like an AC joint sprain. It'll be interesting to see some actual I want to see footage of him throwing the ball in practice to feel good.
Yeah,
But,
this is it's
the
one
same-
off the board.
Yeah,
it is off the board at the moment.
There's some goofy. That's probably for Rex Burkhead though. He tore his ACL. I'm guessing that's why they pulled that down. All right, R.I.P. the best running back in New England. There, they had an ugly game. They just couldn't stop Deshaun. They were actually moving the ball at times, but that team has kind of lost all the identities it's had over the past couple of years. Where we have good coverage unit, we can stop good quarterbacks, or we're able to do whatever we need to do on offense to just get it done. They don't have Tom anymore, and they haven't quite figured out exactly how Cam fits in at times. He's good at times. He's horrible at times. Not interested in laying the points on the road with a possibly hurt, inconsistent at time quarterback. But again, I'm not getting in bed with the Cam Newton show right now. I'd actually lean towards this under a little. Like Arizona at times can be inefficient on offense. If this keeps getting bet up, I might be the buyback later in the week, as much as it sucks to bet an under.
And Eric, what about you?
I actually like New England here. I think with Murray's injury, that significantly reduces some of his effectiveness. I think with Belichick, while they're not playing as well on defense, I think he does do a pretty good job of taking away the best option every team has and makes them play left-handed. And with Arizona, that option is pretty clear. in DeAndre Hopkins. And I think Cam Newton's actually played really well over the past like 4 or 5 weeks. And Arizona's defense, they got a pop-up performance by Isaiah Simmons the other day. But I don't think it's a good group. So give me New England here plus the 3. I think they're still going to play hard. Given that they're still they're 2 games behind the Raiders and have a tiebreaker there. So I think that they can still sort of like talk themselves into a possible playoff position.
All right, we'll move on to the big one, the game of the week: New York Giants at the Cincinnati Bengals. Minimal movement, minimal interest. I think the Giants are 4.5-point favorites. A small drop on the total from 43 to 42. Look, it's the worst game on the slate, isn't it? It's probably one of the worst of the season. Joe encouraging Burrow now out. Finley coming in. The Giants on a bye, that still in the hunt for the NFC East and potentially some value there for you guys. I can't believe I'm going to say this, but is there value in the Giants at 4.5? Do you think, Eric? I'll go to you.
No, I like Cincinnati here. I don't know if I can get to betting it, and it looks like people like the Giants the way that the number's changing. So I'm probably off this. Like you can't lay 4.5 points with a quarterback who is as disaster prone as Daniel Jones is. Bengals have some parts that I think are okay. Jesse Bates, for example, on defense is good for a big play every single game. And, while Ryan Finley is bad, he has decent support on the outside. So I don't know, like this isn't, I can't rush to bet the Giants here.
Yeah, I wanted to talk myself into betting the Giants, but that's rough for me. Again, with Daniel Jones, like in the trying to trick yourself into taking a position, I've done a little bit of, again with like Garrett and how they've framed this offense the past few weeks. It feels like they're trying to Jones-proof it a little, where they're doing some things to take the big gaffes out of it and running him a little more, which is kind of nice. He's actually a nice little runner. Again, it's a lot of points on the road for a pretty bad team with some gaping holes in skill position players. But then I'm not getting involved in the Ryan Finley show. That could be the same thing where, like, all of a sudden Bradbury has 2 pick sixes and you're feeling pretty bad about taking those points anyway. So Finley is a replacement level or below. I don't like getting involved too much in these where you have a player that we have tape on him, but we haven't seen him play much this year. So no thanks on either side for this one.
If that's a kind of general approach, and I think a lot of people will take the same strategy, do you have like a number of games or an amount of data that you can begin to look at that thinks, well now I'm at my level where I can sort of reasonably assess this or actually look at the markets and maybe get involved and have a bet?
Yeah, I mean it's kind of nice. There's that second game, and it sucked for Luton because it didn't work out with the Packers, and obviously that line was massive. But sometimes if a guy like this has a decent first game, like there is a bet against spot in that second game where it's like, all right, now they've seen this guy play. They're actually gonna prep for this guy next week. And they have some film on them. They can put a game plan together based on, well, here's what their game plan is using this backup quarterback. And you usually see these guys get harassed. In Luton's, I think that was the second game, was the Green Bay game, right? That was a weird one where it was like a 14.5 point spread on the road, and Green Bay really did play down. They probably could have played a lot better in that game, but I'm going to keep an eye on Finley, and it might be a bet against. I hope he has a good game against the Giants, because that could be a spot to use down the road if the market over adjusts to like, oh, this kid isn't bad. Yeah, go look at where Luton is now. It's horrible.
Is there and Eric, for you, what's kind of the line between? I mean, you can make observations, you can't really make conclusions. What numbers or sample size do you begin to look at before it actually becomes meaningful?
Well, I mean, you could probably know a decent amount about a quarterback in 100 or so dropbacks. It's just, sort of how confident are you in the error, the possible errors. For other things like defense, I'm probably not going to be confident at all, even all the way until the end of the season, just because there's so much variability there. There's so many things that can knock it off of its course. So I think it really does depend upon the sort of variable you're measuring.
Right, so now we've got, is it the, I think Browns, and it's Miles Garrett, I think, on the COVID list is probably the reason there. I'm not
Again, yeah.
sure. Yeah. I think they were up near a touchdown, 6.5. Obviously it's off the board now. Is it something you're interested in at the early numbers, or is it one where you now wait for it to come back and see where it's at?
Boy, Mayfield's not good, man. They were, what was it? It was 12-7, and essentially it was 7-3. Like 9 of those points were from the Cleveland defense. I mean, I bet Cleveland, and I'm comfortable saying Mayfield was bad. The Cleveland Browns offense was bad. I'm not sure what they were doing. It was just like Carson Wentz gave you a game. Like, yeah, have it. I'm gonna be horrible. I'm gonna take a safety. I'm gonna throw a hilarious pick six. Like, Cleveland's not a good team. They're 7-3 with a negative point differential, and their best pass rushers out again. Although, what is it? Claiborne? I'm trying to think of the guy who stepped up. Somebody had a couple sacks. Claiborne. Boy, it's gonna bother me. Adrian Claiborne.
Yeah.
I don't know why I couldn't think of his name. He had a couple sacks. It's nice to see a guy step up, but it's against Philly, that line, and a quarterback who's, I mean, we had this problem with you, Ben, when your daylight savings time is different than ours here in America. Like, Wentz's daylight savings time is somewhere else because his like internal clock is off. He's lost back there. He's holding the ball for weird periods of time, taking awful hits and fumbling it again. So the Browns, I don't know if I can even upgrade them off that win. So it's a lot of points to lay, but Jacksonville might just be that bad with Luton. I don't know if I'll get involved in this, but if I did have to bet this, I'd be looking for, hopefully someone can offer me a 6 on this and back the Browns again and just pray that the other team gives them a win.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to have a chance on both sides of the ball, aren't they? Jacksonville aren't going to trouble them when they've got it, and they're going to be scored on pretty easy. To Andy's point, Eric, then how bad is Mayfield? I mean, it's been pretty much season long. What do you make of him and where he's at now?
His ups are good. Like last week, he almost led he was second in the league, I think, in big time throws. He's at like a 5.5% there. They have a positive EPA when they pass the ball, but he has a 31.3 passer rating when under pressure. So there's clearly like leaks there in his game. This might not be the game. I mean, Jake Luton's passer rating when under pressure this year is 2.8, not like yards per attempt, but 2.8 passer rating. 39.3, I believe, is what it is. But you just spike the ball every time. 7% of his throws are turnover worthy. So this is one where it's tough to lay this many points on the road. It's Cleveland's first normal weather game in quite some time. So some of our data on them is a little bit noisy. So I'm probably just off this game altogether, just because there's a number of uncertainties here. Again, starting with Garrett being on reserve COVID.
Yeah, that's not great.
I also I just naturally call him Juice Luton now. Just don't even think about it. So what do we have? We've got next. It's the Panthers at the Vikings. This one I don't have any info from on Pinnacle. I don't think I'm not sure whether it actually got up and anything was listed. I don't know if you guys were on any early numbers for this one, but what do you make of it?
It's quarterback down there too with Teddy. Teddy was available as a backup, but they just didn't want to play him. So I'm assuming he'll probably go. I'm guessing that's why it's off. And then with Thielen COVIDed out, maybe that's part of the reason. But I think that's confirmed. Like, he's out. He's not playing, right?
I think he actually tested positive for COVID. So I think they're 10 days before. Unless they find this to be a false positive. But yeah, I mean, both of these teams average the same amount of expected points per pass. The difference is the Panthers are a lot better coached than the Vikings. And the Vikings over the last few games have decided that they're going to try to make Dalvin Cook the MVP, and they've gone 1-1 against two teams whose record is 8-2 12 or 8-13, something like that. So I would lean Panthers. I've seen it at 4. I don't know, Andy, Vikings fan. Like, there's no way Teddy doesn't beat the Vikings, is there?
No, this is Carolina money line or nothing. Like their defense is bad, and Minnesota will probably move the ball, but Minnesota's defense is super susceptible on the outside. They have really good receivers as well here, and if Teddy plays, they move the ball with PJ Walker. They'll move the ball with Teddy on this defense. Yeah. Like this total is low, even with Thielen out.
That's
like,
a good point.
I think this total is low, and I'm waiting for a couple things. But if I have any indication that Bridgewater plays, like 48.5 should be steamed to 51 in a hurry.
Yeah, the only reason that the total would be this way is because both teams, the Panthers though have done, when they don't think that the other team is better than them, they don't play the like low possession game, right? Yeah. They and I don't think they can't be looking to Minnesota and thinking, oh, this team's definitively better than us, right? They have the same amount of wins. Yeah. So, and Joe Brady, like I hate to be a hater on the Vikings, but like Joe Brady is way better than anything the Vikings have on their staff, right? And they'll find a way to exploit some of the weaknesses the Vikings have in the secondary, the way that some of these teams like Detroit couldn't and Chicago couldn't. I think Carolina will, and this is a team that took Kansas City down to the wire. Like, what are we gonna, what does Minnesota really have?
Yeah. No, and Minnesota will be able to move the ball, even with out Thielen on this defense. But they might lose this game in a high scoring, just similar to the Cowboys game where it's like, oh, we can't stop anything they're doing. So I'm probably looking at this over. I'm checking if this is up anywhere. Like, I'd kind of forgotten about this game with some of the. I've been really dialed in on having 3 Thursdays games. It's really screwed with my process for the week.
Well, we've got one that is on the board, and we've got some numbers to work with. It's the Titans at the Colts. Another one where it's really the total that's in the most early action, 49.5 up to 50.5. The side's on its opening market at -3.5. Sorry. Big comeback win for the Colts against Green Bay. The Titans bounced back from the poor game against the Colts they had, felt like, was it 2-3 weeks ago? With that win against Baltimore. The Colts got an easy win in the one last time around. Is it just same again at -3, do you think? How do the Titans go about covering this one, Eric?
Well, the Titans cover this one by throwing the ball in early downs and hopefully feeling empowered by getting behind against the Ravens by multiple scores, turning around, throwing the ball to Corey Davis. He had over 100 yards in that game. And A.J. Brown was an absolute monster on the game, tying touchdown, or the go-ahead touchdown. They ended up having to go back to overtime. The Colts are a team, they use they squeeze all of the juice out of the orange. Like, they go for every fourth down. They go for, their basic strategy is almost perfect. So if you're Tennessee, and you don't look back at the game on 2 Thursdays ago and say, why did we lose? Well, we lost because we were horrible on special teams, and we punted when Indianapolis went for it, and we ran the ball too much on early downs. If you don't correct it, I think if they correct those things, they're a better team, especially on offense than the Colts. And that's why I think I'll take +3.5. But this is one where I'm certainly coaching the bet a little bit, thinking that if the Titans do X, Y, and Z, this is a great bet, knowing full well that they could do, A, B, and C.
Yeah, the market didn't like the opener last time, certainly in Tennessee. I believe it crossed 0. Tennessee ended up closing
Slightly
as a
favored.
dog. Yeah, slight favor. It wasn't like a massive move, but Indy money the whole time. Where this opened this time is probably about perfect. Again, I've talked about this. I looked at that box score because I missed the second half of that game doing something. And I thought, oh, fluky, blocked punt return, 17-yard punt. But then I looked back more at that first half, and Indy really left points on the field in the first half. Like, they should have scored a lot more points after some really dead drives. Indy should have been leading at half and shouldn't have had to have a massive second half. So I have this right on market. I'm not interested in either side here. Tennessee, yeah, if they're able to, Tennessee has a a smart coaching staff, I think. If they're able to correct some of the mistakes here, this should be a very close game. If I had to bet it, I'd probably take the points, but I will be staying away from this one. And I don't really have any futures involved in these teams either. I'm not even sure I'm cheering for someone. I'll just be cheering for. I'll go check if I have some fantasy players, I guess. And yeah, AJ Brown, geez, when he caught that ball, that was like if you could set a probability on him scoring at that second when he got his hands on the ball, it was very, very low. I have no idea what happened there, where they just like everybody couldn't tackle him. He just kept just like he was walking through people. Like, I'm going this way. You guys come with me if you want. And he just marched into the end zone. He's a man. So
Yeah.
We you kind of mentioned there about kind of how some teams approach the game and play a little smarter than others. There always seems to be that point you get in a season where you talk about analytically minded coaches and the impact that might have. And I think, Eric, it was Kevin Cole from you guys that was actually on Rufus's podcast talking about this as well. Is that obviously it comes into play when you're profiling teams and pre-match and stuff like that? Do you look to that in terms of live betting as well, or is it something that's just so many unique situations and things that can impact itself? Is it kind of not really too important in that respect?
Oh, it's important. I mean, like last night, I don't know, we were talking, Andy, we're just like, the Rams are going to go into a shell here, right? If they get ahead, then maybe the under live is a thing. But even I think that probably the most impactful place you could probably bet it is if you look at like the decreasing value of key numbers. I mean, when a team like the Colts is willing to go for 2 when they're down 8 in a game, that's going to significantly reduce the value of a 7. When a team, is less likely to kick field goals, or, a team, just 2-point usage is a big deal, right? And it sort of makes, like we saw the Philadelphia Eagles, I think it was 2 weeks ago, go for 2 when they were down 4. That's almost never seen before, right? And so when you think about when you're handicapping Philadelphia, Indianapolis games, Cleveland probably another one as well, the key numbers are no longer as valuable. And there's a percent or two that you're going to lose. I don't know about live betting. I would say, a team that's probably more likely to go for it more often is probably going to induce more points, just because the go for it situations are now pretty clear for most teams in between the 40s. But like a team like the Colts might go for it at their own 30, which is going to impact, like if they miss it, the other team's going to score at least a field goal, and if they go for it, then they'll probably score themselves. So there's a little bit to it, but I haven't put it really in a model yet.
All right.
That's a whole can of worms, man.
I'll get us on to another game. What we got next on the board? Is it LA Chargers at the Bills? Repeating myself a bit, but it looks like, again, it's the total that's interesting. Early betters 51.5 up to 53.5. It's -5.5 on Buffalo on the side. The Chargers don't look great. I guess Herbert's kind of exciting to watch. There's an obvious jump up from the Jets to the Bills. They're also coming off a bye, pushing the 6. It does look pretty stable. Andy, is it one outside of the Thursday games that you are interested in yet?
Yeah, one of your chucklehead competitors opened a 50 on this on Sunday, and I thought that was pretty funny. That was 51 within a very short time, and then we've seen where that gone. So, and even anyone opened a little later at the 51.5, or I mean, apparently there's someone who opened a 49.5 according to one of the screens, which I can't imagine that was there very long either. But yeah, this total got bet up. Buffalo's defense continues to force them into being an over team, and they're a team that I love from behind. Like, they are fully willing to just abandon the run at times and turn into a really good passing team. Like, Buffalo from behind is, you talk about live betting. It's funny, the two teams that I love this the most for met the one week when Buffalo and Seattle played. Seattle down 14-0. That was just hitting live overs everywhere that would let you. And it's the same kind of thing with Buffalo, where if they are behind, I'd love to see them behind for this over, because they're not a team I'm worried about at all coming back, and their defense is still bad enough that they'll continue to let the other team move the ball. So hopefully, hopefully Herbert's up for the challenge, and he's looked good this year. He's more than encouraging, I think, Eric.
He's great. And the Chargers, as we found out last week against the spread, even are the ultimate slump buster, right? So you can you can be assured if Buffalo gets behind in this game, the Chargers are going to blow the lead enough for the total to go over for sure.
Right, so
They are a
we've
slump
got
buster. I like that. I don't think I could. I wouldn't bet the side. It's a little too much. My numbers probably don't make Buffalo that much of a favorite. I'd lean Chargers, but I wouldn't be betting
The
that.
Chargers are an example of a team whose coaching will cause me not to bet them if
That's
I
a good.
see
That's a
some
very
value.
good way to put that.
the next one we've got is the Dolphins at the Jets, and is this one Tua? I saw that he came out of the game. I don't know what the current situation is there. Forgive, there's kind of more info coming out of it, but what is the latest on this from you guys? And again, is there early numbers that have been taken from either of you?
This one hasn't moved a whole lot. It looks like maybe a little to the under. It is going to be Tua, but they're not going to be afraid to yank him if he's ineffective. That was a tough scene. I thought maybe he was injured. He maybe got his ankle hit a little, but Flores came out and said, "I'm going to do what gives us a chance to win." I like him as a coach. This is a lot to lay on the road for a young quarterback like that. Up north in the cold, swirling winds of the Meadowlands. My number makes it big enough where I says I should, but I'll have to be looking into a few things on this. The Jets, I feel like the Jets had one more injury besides Perrine as well. Was it the center that got, or no, George Fant was injured. I don't know the extent of that. So just more injuries for the Jets. If I had to bet this, it would be Miami. Put favorite under. That's always a fun combo, but like Miami 26-0 doesn't sound out of the realm of possibility.
How about you,
Their
Eric?
offense looked a little peaked at times, though, against a good game plan.
Yeah, look, the Jets with their three receivers healthy are not the worst offense I've ever seen in the world. And I think the only side here is the Jets. There's not a whole lot else to say other than laying 7 with a rookie quarterback on the road is a tough proposition in the NFL.
Yeah,
And I'm sure if we had another square down the bottom left there, I'm sure he'd be saying the same with the Jets as well. What we got for our next game? We have got the Saints at the Broncos. And this one is on a 2-point drop off the total, 46 down to 44. The Saints are minus 5.5 point favorites. Big surprise or big talking point from week 11, the non-decision that was a decision, and Saints going with Hill instead of Jameis. Pretty decent game. Eric, what did you make of it from sort of a quarterback analysis point of view?
Look, Taysom Hill played well. It was weird. I mean, like his throw to Sanders, the 2 throws to Sanders were awful. And if there's a defense that it sort of reminded me of growing up in Minnesota, Andy, of Kenny Wright and like Jimmy Hitchcock trying to cover people downfield. It was awful. But on the other plays where he was running play action and throwing to his left to Michael Thomas was getting open. Taysom was hitting him. So that it wasn't Tebow like. It certainly wasn't. And if he can continue to perform that way, they're going to be a difficult out. I worry sometimes about whether that's repeatable. Denver, as we talked about last week on the show, one remaining home field advantage probably left in the NFL with the altitude and the weather and things like that. So I don't think I can get on either side here. Maybe if I get Denver up to 6, I'll take it. But right now I think I'm gonna halt Taysom Hill slander for at least a week.
Yeah, my unadjusted for Hill numbers make this New Orleans -7, but again, not giving any bonus for like late season cold weather, altitude, home field advantage. And Denver played up a little last week, and like I said earlier in the show there, maybe now that we've never really seen what Taysom Hill looks like as a quarterback. It's like he's a tight end, he's a gadget player. When he comes in, he's often just running the ball. Like we don't have I don't know how you prepare for that. That had to be a nightmare for the defensive coordinator to try to come up with a game plan. Whereas now we saw what's going on, and we've got a defensive minded head coach slash defensive minded team. Again, with I don't know if Drew Lock can do much, but I wouldn't be surprised if Denver was able to make him look more Tebow-esque than he did last week, with a week to prepare, seeing what New Orleans is actually putting out there with him as the featured quarterback. So it would probably be Denver or nothing for me here.
And I mean, it's a good point,
And
Eric.
probably
How
the
much?
under, man. Jeez.
How much do you think it was sort of that element of the unknown or the surprise where you just can't plan for it?
Right, and given the opponent, the Falcons, who are often unprepared, I can see that being a deal. Also, there was some noise inherent in there. I mean, Hill's passer rating when under pressure this season is 118.8. He has twice as many big turnover-worthy plays as big-time throws. Like there are things like he threw an interception in the red zone that got dropped and resulted in a field goal early in the game. So, like. Yeah, I mean, it's one of those wait and see things. Obviously, it was encouraging, as I said before, that he didn't completely play poorly. But, the last quarterback in such a situation went into Denver last week and got benched. So, I don't know if I can take less than a touchdown with Locke, but I think it's probably the right side.
Okay, well, on we go to the San Francisco 49ers at the LA Rams. -7.5 on the Rams here, 45.5 point total. This one we had sort of early season, I think it was. The Rams headed into that and the favorites, but they were definitely shorter than the -7.5. The 49ers have been pretty poor since then, and I think they had a big win at the Patriots the week after, but the Rams have obviously been a little bit better than that. Two teams that they've dropped away since Super Bowl losses. Not sure what we can read into that, but we're talking about this season, this game. Is there any value in the current prices, you think, Andy?
Rams defense is my best defense right now. I don't know where Dr. Eric ranks them, but they are up there, and they're getting pressure from multiple spots in that front now. They have an actual shutdown corner at times, and they have a lot of good pieces and a decent game plan they're putting together. They played a really tough offense. How do you cover all those guys? I mean, those are like multiple all-pro receivers, an all-world Hall of Fame tight end that's coming back into he looked terrible. Gronk looked terrible when he first came back. Now all of a sudden it's looking like that's a huge guy going across the middle who's just gonna gobble up stuff in the seam. Like they did an admirable job, I thought, and really they had to do more than they should have with golfing late in the game and some of the things McVay decided to do on offense. Like they could have held the ball a lot longer on offense and not had to deal with Brady and those receivers. So I don't think I can give any sort of downgrade just because they gave up that amount of points to a really good offense. The Rams defense, I think this is another nice matchup for them. Although for some reason, and I spoke with somebody about this yesterday, Pete Carroll can't figure out Sean McVay, but Sean McVay can't figure out Kyle Shanahan. And it's this weird love triangle up there with these coaches. There is something
the rock
about
paper scissors diagram.
It's very, very rock paper scissors. So if there ever was a time, McVay, you need this win because the division is in the balance here. They could absolutely win this division. My numbers have them being the favorite for the division out of the two, just based on how I power rate the rest of the games. I actually might look at some futures. If they had lost last night, I would have definitely looked at some futures. But the way the tiebreakers are held too, I like the Rams. So I'm not super interested in laying a 7. If there's some 7.5s laying about later in the week, it might be a teaser leg for me.
I'm forced to take San Francisco here, plus 7.5. Rams short weeks, San Francisco bye.
Yeah.
As you said with Shanahan, I think there's a amount of pride there that is that's necessary. They've also won too many games to really be in the running for one of the truly elite quarterbacks in the draft. And they're getting a little bit healthier. Obviously, one of the last times you saw them play, you had the COVID situation with Green Bay. And And the other thing is, like, I agree with you. The Rams have been one of the most impressive teams in the league. Their wide receivers, I think Robert Woods is a top 10 guy in the league. I think Kupp is also terrific. They move Ramsey around to make it really hard in the opposing offense. He essentially makes every player on that defense better by playing the hardest spot on the field all the time. But 7.5 is too many on the road. Whether, Santa Clara, might be, there might be issues there as well. Like, I think this is more closely contested than we think.
I'm just surprised to learn that you're ranking the Rams above this season's big love, Andy, and the Steelers.
Oh yeah, no, the Steelers' defense is still very good, but the Rams have been some. Maybe it's 1 and 1A because I do love everything about the Rams' defense. And Eric's a big Ben guy.
All right, well let's get on to our next game, and we have got it's the Chiefs at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, -3 on the Chiefs. One of those ones with the big total at 55.5. Chiefs are obviously winning plenty. There's a few where they haven't quite covered, and I don't know whether that's sort of approach to the game or what's quite going wrong there, but they're not blowing away some teams that maybe they should. It's one here where it's a difficult one, isn't it? It's where do the Chiefs go from here? Do they play out and keep it as a tight game, or is it one where they can just run away with it?
Tampa Bay straight up, right?
Yeah, the Bucs have been kind of found out a little bit on defense. Devin White and Sean Murphy bunting. When you look at teams throwing in their coverage, they've attempted 117 passes there and completed 100 of them for over 1,000 yards and 7 touchdowns. Like, with teams that are like diverse enough and sort of find those mismatches, I think can really exploit them. And last night's game, I tweeted this out before. I thought that the Rams didn't match up very well against Tampa Bay because they were without their offensive line. They were, Goff is, pretty bad under pressure, and they completely mitigated it by simply just throwing quick game, which they have not done the majority of their time, under McVay. So if it's that easy to exploit for McVay, who's pretty good, but not nearly as good as Andy Reid, I think Andy Reid will find a way to exploit it himself.
Yeah, the over might be the look. Again, it's one of those big numbers, but at the same time, I know a guy who plays punt props in a lot of these primetime games.
Yeah.
And so I kind of, just because he posts it so much, I kind of get a feel for what they're going to be. Like, whatever it is, it's going to be too high. Like, you said at 6.5, it'll be too high. I'm not sure where this one will be, but yeah, this offense played admirably. Is like I just said in the inverse, the Rams defense is very good. The Chiefs defense is not. Like, they got carved up by the Raiders. They were the last team that had the ball. I guess technically the Raiders did get the ball back and threw that pick, but like, Kansas City's defense is not something I'm excited about right now. And like you said, you called a leak. There's a weak spot. There's a big old hole in the armor in a couple of the spots in that defensive secondary for Tampa Bay. And Andy Reid is the kind of, if we know about it, Andy Reid knows about it 2 weeks ago. Like, they're gonna pick on those guys. Bunting's gonna give up God knows what to Reek, and they're gonna score their points. So, as much as I hate just saying bet the late number, this total's already ticked up. Like, there's some 55s and a halves. Like, this total might get crushed again. Although Kansas City's drives have been a little more methodical of late.
The thing that kept them from covering, I think, on Sunday night was their field position was just atrocious. Yeah. They basically had to cross the street 100 times to get to the end zone each time, and for the most part they did. But their defense, I think their defense does match up worse with some of these teams that have more explosive players than maybe a more methodical team like Tampa, though. I will say, like, that's kind of been they've struggled with those types of offenses of late.
Yeah.
Right, we've got another one that's off the board. The Bears at the Packers. I think the the Packers were over a touchdown favourites for this. Is it off the board because Trubisky may be coming back? I guess I'm not sure about this one, but again, is it one where you got in early, or is it one where you need to wait for all the information to come in before you make your play?
Yeah, this might not be on the board for a while if they can't decide what they're doing here at quarterback. I'm almost assuming it's for sure it's that. I don't know if they have who else they have on the roster for a quarterback.
Kyler Bray, the
It's
former Chief.
Bray, and then I think Slaughter is on the practice squad.
Yeah,
So
the
it could
Vikings.
be Slaughterhouse 5. Like, I would take Bears straight up.
Notoriously loudmouth Twitter, Slaughter would go around liking tweets that I would have that said he's not going to make the team, and then he didn't make the team.
Yeah, he was the greatest preseason quarterback.
He was.
Possibly
He
in the
was
history
like
of the league.
He was a moneymaker in preseason DFS and betting for sure. But when I look at this game, like the Packers, I said last week, are too soft, I think, in some ways, to really be a contender in the NFL. I think the Bears on the defensive side of the ball still are playing, very proud football. And the Packers are, going to give up run. I kind of think the under, whenever, like if they show anything near 50, I'm going under in this game. I don't know actually what it'll end up being. But I think both of these teams are kind of in a position where they'll move the ball to like the middle of the field and punt a lot. So I saw 45 before they took it down.
Yeah, that's probably where it needs to be.
That probably is a decent number. Because I think the Bears will play a tough game even against a decent Packers offense. And I think the Packers defense is soft enough where the Bears, as bad as they are, will have some success. So, but not enough success to score points, just enough success to move it, not go 3 and out every time like they did against Minnesota. So this is a weird one.
Yeah, if you're looking at it too, the Bears team total is gonna be like 17. That could be an underplay.
Yeah,
it's gonna be well, what do you got? 22.5 minus like 19. Do they get to 19?
No.
Bears team total under might be a look there. That might come up tonight.
Without scoring a defensive touchdown, I feel like there's a 0% chance.
Yeah, especially if it's a banged up Trubisky, a horrible Foles, or God forsake Tyler Bray or Kyle Slaughter. Like, it doesn't matter. This offense is not going to work. Green Bay's defense is not great, but it can stop. Nagy will just stop this offense on its own. Like, that's what happens. He's the best defense for it.
I just hope he plays so Eric can tweet him and slate him and see what happens.
Slaughter.
Right, our last game on the board, and thankfully the numbers are up. It's the Seattle Seahawks at the Philadelphia Eagles. It's a drop from 6 on the Seahawks to -5. Totals dropped as well, 53 down to 51. I think this one that the Seahawks were great. Russell Wilson was incredible. Super Bowl MVP. They couldn't be beaten. And then obviously the inevitable poor run of games. They did bounce back against Arizona and a decent enough Wilson performance. As much as it could be this one, the Seahawks playing well, I think plenty of people looking at this number might be basing their decisions on how poor Philadelphia can be. I know we've talked about the divisional stuff at length. In terms of this game, are Philadelphia bad enough to take the Seahawks at the -5 here for either of you guys?
What do you think? It's too many for me, honestly, with that with that team.
I may get like 6, but there's not like a huge value here taking a road team in a goofy spot. Extra rest, lots and lots of extra rest, I guess, for Seattle. Is that Thursday to Thursday to Monday? Am I correct on that? Yeah. So you got a big rest spot. Philly
That's
coming
so
off
weird.
a ugly rain game.
Was
And the schedule is weird, but then it also got moved around a little on some of these teams when we ended up with some of the goofiness. So, man, Seattle. In the game against the Cardinals, like Wilson took care of the ball. He was good under pressure. And they didn't like force the issue of like we have to just be this offensive juggernaut. They did it just enough to keep up on the scoreboard without screwing it up, because Wilson had a rough stretch of like 3 weeks where he was throwing, I think 3 out of 4 weeks he threw multiple picks, and the defense, as bad as it is, they kept Kyler in check, and I think Carlos Dunlap made a difference. And
Yeah.
that might be the reason to lay the points on the road, is just with Wentz under pressure. If they can get any sort of pressure, he's liable to turn the ball over probably on
Yeah,
average like 1.5 times a game. Short field position with Seattle, all of a sudden you're staring down the barrel of a double-digit deficit pretty quick.
Wentz's quarterback rating of 83.2 from a clean pocket, 83.2 without any pressure would be bad in the 90s, let alone now. He has a passer rating of 49.1 when under pressure, which is awful as well. They throw the ball 67% of the time and dump 1/10 of an expected point every time they do it. This is a bad offense. The only way, and this is always going to scare me with Seattle, the only way that I think that Seattle struggles here is that they run the football too much. And there's a little bit of evidence that last Thursday, that's what they wanted to do, and they won. And like that would make me a little bit worried.
All right, well that's the slate. As I said, there's a few games that aren't on the board at Pinnacle. Some of them to wait on, but obviously we got plenty of games to look forward to, and Thanksgiving in amongst all of it as well. So thanks for the time today, Eric and Andy. Happy Thanksgiving to you, and I'll speak to you again next week.
Yep, thanks, Ben.
Thank you.
And thank you to everyone for listening. If you do want the latest NFL odds, obviously head over to pinnacle.com. Good luck with any bets, and remember to always gamble responsibly.